Title of this solo podcast is What is Life? It's very difficult to know what precisely life is. Is it the events that occur in a human being's life? Is that life? Is it how he feels? Is it his accomplishments, his failures, how his children turn out, what his family life is like? From what angle can one view something? And this is the difficult thing about everything, is that there's so many angles. There's no clear guide to anything. One can view anything at all from any perspective. The mind is infinite. It travels to all domains in a flash, in an instant. We are told by society that we should do this and that, and we should view life from this perspective, and that life is about happiness, or life is about helping other people. But even if you look at the standpoint of, or the viewpoint of helping other people, what is that but a chance to make oneself feel good? So there's nothing negative or positive about any of these things. The question is, what is the truth? Is life all about wanting to feel good? Because that seems to be the driving force behind the fundamental existence of man, is the desire to feel good. I wish to succeed so that I may feel good. I wish to become wealthy so that I may feel good. I wish to help others so that I may feel that I'm a benevolent individual and that I have done for my fellow man. I wish to be kind to others so that I can gain a sense of moral correctness. So everything is related to an ulterior motive of wanting to feel good. And it really, I grow tired of sometimes mentioning these disclaimers. Um, but there's no negative or positive here. There's no right and wrong. There's no good and bad. It isn't wrong or negative uh, to want to feel good. It's an examination of the truth. Well, what is it that life fundamentally, in its ultimate grainy reality, what is it? I think it's a falling leaf. I think it's a river that flows toward the ocean without having any interest in arriving at the ocean, nor any interest in being proud of its effort of moving towards the ocean. I think it's the wind that blows, a knock on the door, a clapping of one's hands. Anything and everything that has nothing at all to do with the intellect. That is life. Anything at all that does not involve the domain of thought and thinking, or strategizing, or intentionality, or wanting to achieve, or hoping to provide, or desiring to gain, or needing to give, where there are not even the seeds of rules, where there isn't even the shadow of hope, where what is is, and there is no opinion about what is. What is life? It's the ringing of a bell. That's one's entire life. There is no significance to anything. And the reason that there is no significance to anything is because nothing lasts. There cannot be anything significant about something that does not last. An emotion arrives today and it leaves the very next minute. A success arrives today and it fails to have an impact after a few weeks or a few days. There is a constant need for replenishment, a constant need to replace what has disappeared. Therefore, there is nothing permanent. Everything in this life is temporary. Therefore, how can it have any significance? Nothing can have a weight. W-E-I-G-H-T. Nothing can have a weight if it is here only for a moment. I think one of the central myths that leads humans astray is once again something that is so invisible, like prescriptions, that it is never even thought to be examined, and that is the need to become happy. And whenever I say anything, it will be natural. It will be a natural reflexive tendency of your mind to immediately jump to the opposite. So if I say that a myth that leads man astray is the need to be happy, the mind will often immediately jump to, well, then should I be sad? And happiness and sadness, joy and misery are all the same because they only exist because of the other. There would be no need for happiness if there was no misery. So they are interdependent, and because they are interdependent, they cannot survive in their own soil. When one thing requires another, then it doesn't in fact exist. It is only a reaction to. It is spawned by. Something that is real, something that is true, exists of its own domain. It needs no support. It requires no explanation. It is truth. It is solid. It is incontrovertible. It depends upon no one and nothing. So, what is life? Like all things, I think that one arrives at the truth by way of negation, by way of elimination, by way of subtraction. And when all the things that one has believed to be significant when all the things that one has believed to be real, and all the beliefs that one has had are removed, when they are seen through, when they are recognized as a whim of the mind and an imbibement of societal influence, then the amorphous and unspeakable, nameless non-entity that remains is the closest thing to the truth. While there is everything in this life, it is all a mirage. It's passing clouds. It's one explosion after another. It's sound that comes and goes. And we as humans get in the way. And as we get in the way, we feel as if it is happening to us. But in reality, things happen in the vicinity of ourselves. They do not really happen to us because there really is no us for them to happen to. I think it's very important not to attempt to read into my words, because if you do, then you will fall into the trap of intellectualization. The words must have a communion with one's interiority without being touched by the filtering mechanism of the mind. For the filtering mechanism of the mind will repackage them into untruth. It will repackage them into ideas to analyze and philosophize about. And this will lead to questions that are based largely in intellectual gymnastics. And this is precisely the habit of the mind, because it recognizes that when a human hears truth, its job is to remove him as quickly as possible from that truth in order to keep it within its domain of the mind. Whatever gets through, and what does not, does not. There is no need from my end for things to get through, as it would be best if there was no need for you to need to allow things to get through. Whatever the communion is, it is. Whatever the chemical reaction that takes place between two elements takes place. Involvement is interference. So what is life? It's nothing and everything. And all the things that one has thought that his life really was. It really is not. Good night. Freedom Song, a private discourse. One is enslaved by the idea of a self. So long as a self is held in clear view, so long as it is a pervasive idea in the mind, so long as one subscribes to the notion of it, freedom is not possible. For the whole of our lives, we are in a constant state of preoccupation, a constant state of worry, a constant state of fear, a constant state of anxiety, a constant state of uncertainty, a constant state of conflict. Never in our life is everything perfect. Never are our affairs in order. One arrives at a true milepost in his life when he realizes that this will be his or her existence until the day they die. Tomorrow will be no different, just as every tomorrow of the past has not been different. What we experience as our lives today is the best it will ever get. Do not be disillusioned by the idea that fortunate events that come to you will change anything. Even after 1,000 fortunate events, we return to the way we are. Remember a great truth. Man forever defaults to his defaults. The self is the mother of all problems. It is the one complete source of all of a human being's anxieties. There is no spiritual path versus worldly path. There is only a human path. It is not as if the one who walks a spiritual path is a different human being, subject to different human conditions. Even the spiritual path is a worldly path. Both are paths of bondage. There is only the path of freedom. There is only the path of truth, the path to meet the source of all our pains, so that we may be free of them forever. The path to meet the creator of all our sufferings, so that we may never suffer again. These are the only paths. For whether a man is spiritual or worldly, he does not seek misery. Whether he is spiritual or worldly, he craves freedom. Naturally, the thought will arise in the mind. If the self is the source of all my bondage, what do I do about it? There is nothing to do. The world has conditioned you and brainwashed you with the idea of doings. All doings are an attempt to cleverly escape from seeing the problem. They are essentially a closing of one's eyes and hoping that when he opens them, his problems will have disappeared. You are free to try. When one sees the boiling lava that is the manufacturer of all his miseries, a fundamental transformation takes place within him. A quiet tectonic transformation. Instantly, the quality of his life begins to change. He finds himself moving in different ways. He feels himself growing a new skin, for he has seen the truth. He is no longer interested in the games of the world. He shines like a beacon across the mighty oceans. He stands at the dawn of a new existence. Life begins to surrender to him. His bondages fall away, and he roams the earth as only a free man can. Namaste. For those who wish to apply for the private discourses, they may do so at www.kapilguptamd.com. The title of this solo podcast is The Final Frontier of the Superhuman. So you've accomplished all that you've wanted to accomplish. You've made millions or billions of dollars, or you've achieved the pinnacle in your craft. You've become world famous. You've accumulated more wealth than you know what to do with. So in every regard, you are deemed amongst the super successful, the superhumans of society. So the question that I have now for you is, now what? There's a lot of years left to live. We don't know how many years there are, but there certainly could, chances are there are many years left. How are you going to fill that time? I think this is a question that perhaps not consciously, but at least subconsciously plagues many individuals who have achieved great things in their life and now are stricken by boredom and by listlessness and not really knowing what to do. Many people, it is shocking to me, many of the superhumans in Silicon Valley and elsewhere, when they were creating their own craft, when they were making their own art, they did everything their own way. And when they achieved what they wanted to achieve, or at least mostly what they wanted to achieve, they then delved into this thing called spirituality and in self-optimization and self-development and self-improvement. And when they delve into that arena, they went completely against their own principles. They went against their own grain. Whereas in their craft, they didn't listen to anybody. They did things according to what their instincts told them. When they delved into the world of self-development and spirituality, they began to listen to the so-called experts, the traditionalists, and they did everything that they never did in the creation of their own great craft. That's actually the norm, and it's very puzzling to me why humans would do that, why superhumans would do that in particular. They follow the traditions of the 20 minutes a day of meditation and the going to the silent retreats and the reading of books and all the, human beings love to subscribe to fashions so that they can show off, so that they can demonstrate how intelligent they are by saying that I've read 20 books and how many have you read? It's the new fashion statement as to how many books that you've read and how many silent retreats that you've been to, and that you're this new age and progressive sort of individual who is going above the mainstream by delving into Indian spirituality because it makes you somewhat cultured, or you believe that it optimizes you. And quite frankly, I think that's sort of silly. I think that's beneath the DNA of the superhuman. If a superhuman was going to be a true artist in his own domain, then why should he succumb to the status quo in any domain that he touches? So if he is truly serious about so-called spirituality and self-development, then the first thing that he'll do is begin to approach it in the way that is similar to the way that he approaches his own craft, by debunking all of the nonsense before he accepts one single word. But it doesn't seem to be that way. It seems that when great people from other domains come to this world, they seem to fall hook, line, and sinker for the traditions and the status quo, and they hire a meditation instructor with a ponytail and an Eastern accent, and they begin to, change their name to some Indian name and chant, and they think they're getting somewhere. And that's very much of going through the motions. If you truly want to get somewhere, if you want to become serious, then let's talk. Let's talk about that right now. So in all these years that you have left, what are you going to do? Are you going to meditate them all away? Hopefully become a little bit more peaceful, a little bit more happy, a little less conflict in your relationships. So everything is very menial. Everything is 2% this and 5% this and all this nonsense that you're taught. Well, if you're ultimate in your own craft, then why do you succumb to nonsense in these other things? So if you are going to be serious about it, then get serious. So let's talk seriously about that. Ask any of your meditation instructors if they can turn off their thought at will. Ask them that. I didn't say if they can meditate. I didn't say if they can practice mindfulness and all this silly nonsense, drivel. See, can you turn off your thoughts at will? Can you switch off your mind when you want to turn it off? Do you have the ability to say to your mind, you can now speak, and now you must stay quiet, and your mind listens to you? When emotion gets to you, are you able to understand that emotion has nothing whatsoever to do with you? Not intellectually, but viscerally, organically, naturally. Has that arisen within you? Have you cultivated the understanding that the things that you read in books actually you can discover by reading yourself, by going deep inside yourself, and then you can know anything and everything because all of nature's secrets are embedded within you, rather than reading 400 pages of something that can be said in a paragraph and a half, and yet so that you can go to two cocktail parties and brag about how you've read 15 books this year. It's all social posturing. That's all this is. If you're serious, then get serious. Don't find a meditation instructor. Find out what exactly it is that you want. Find out what exactly is the outer limits of possibility for you. Then you're actually getting somewhere. And you're not getting somewhere so that you can say that you got somewhere. It actually changes the complexion of your entire life experience. The mind is a complete illusion. It creates nothing but illusion, and all of one's reality is created by this mind. Now, when someone hears that, when the so-called tradition follower hears that, the tradition following superhuman hears that, he will then delve further into intellect so that he can have, quote, intelligent conversations with his peers in order to demonstrate how much he knows. So he'll ask questions like, what is consciousness? And what is the best way to practice mindfulness? And is all of this a simulation? And how is it that you can pursue life extension? And all of these pseudo-intellectual nonsense. It's just jargon. None of these people are really interested in really getting anywhere. The most fundamental of which is, can you turn off involuntary thought? That is an absolute superpower. And it isn't just to have the superpower. It is that when involuntary thought is turned off, one arrives at the truth. One's at all the things that one is seeking through these meditations and mindfulnesses and all of these ponytail type, chasing of the Eastern tree, is all of these things come for free without effort. If one is truly sincere, if one truly wants to get somewhere, as opposed to wear the shiny, the orange robe and to light the incense and all of the fashion trends of the quote spiritual world. If you're truly serious, you actually have the DNA as a superhuman to then turn that DNA in this direction so that you can cultivate and discover what the truths really are, the same way that you discovered them in your own profession, which is why you became legendary in your own profession. So why would you acquiesce? Why would you bow down to the status quo and the common thinking if you never did that in your own profession? That happens a lot in golf as well. You see executives who are absolutely world class, and they come to golf and they hire a golf instructor to tell them where to put their left arm, how to stand, how tall to make their posture, what the first move away with the swing is, and they spend 30 years and never get anywhere. And I've always been fascinated that you're the person who went against everything in your own domain, and yet you come and you fall for the traditions and the culture when you were a complete anti-culturalist in your own profession, which is why you became great. Why do you think it's any different in anything else? Every culture is smitten and saturated by trivial ideas, regurgitated concepts, and nonsense. It is not based upon truth. So if you're going to study as a superhuman, if you're going to delve into the world of so-called spirituality, then pursue it from the standpoint of mind. Discover what it is that you really want. Discover where it is that you want to arrive, not what you want to practice, so that you can show off and demonstrate how much you practice. Get serious. The same way that you were serious in your own profession, become serious here, because the same things that you would not listen to in your own profession are the same things that are going on here. The mind is is the sort of final frontier that space could not hope to match. This mind creates for us the entire reality that we believe to be true. And because we believe it to be true, these beliefs have consequences. And our entire life, our actions are based upon the beliefs that the things that we hear and that we think and that we are told are true. And that is a massive departure from reality, which is exactly why we suffer from emotional turmoil and sadness and depression and sorrow and endlessly chasing the mythological idea of happiness, which it does not exist. There is no happiness. The only reason the idea of happiness even exists is because misery is everything. If there was no misery, there would be no happiness. So happiness is a concocted idea that is created as a reaction to misery. And the reason that misery exists because the truth is not known. Whenever the truth is not known, then what is known in place of the truth are concepts. And these concepts are heavily flawed. And because they're heavily flawed, acting upon them creates confusion. Confusion creates failure. Failure creates sadness. This creates a destruction of relationships. This creates a massive hole in seeing what is really there. It saps one's clarity. So truth, peace, clarity, insight leads to dispassion. It leads to a person who is untouched by no matter what happens to him. That's a holy grail, that regardless of what may happen to you, you are unaffected. If you choose to be affected, you may be. If you choose not to be, you are not. That is coming truly into one's own. That is becoming a true superhuman, not just in one's craft, but in this final frontier. This is worth devoting a lifetime to. So the superhuman, if you're listening, be superhuman in all things, not just in the craft that you pursued, and understand that if you come to a new domain that you know very little about, that virtually everything that you hear will be wrong, the same way it was wrong in your own profession. Be serious, get somewhere. The mind is truly the final frontier. Good night. The title of this solo podcast is The Prison of Need. I think the most essential thing to understand, and if you get nothing else out of this solo podcast, this would perhaps be the most resounding message that if you walked away with, it perhaps might benefit you. And that would be that whatever I'm about to say, the idea of trying to live up to it, or the idea of trying to achieve it, or the idea of thinking that this must be done because it's good for you and because it's healthy and because it's correct and it's proper and it's spiritual, that's a very significant mistake. Because the things that I talk about, these are not things like, shining your shoes or, combing your hair in a particular way or, 5 different ways to make your skin cleaner. I mean, these are deep, deep-seated emotional and fundamental issues within human beings. They are well beyond the realm and the grasp of prescription. There isn't any way in the world that any human being alive could prescribe his way to such things, such as ridding himself or herself of need. Any attempt to rid oneself of need or attachment is an utter failure from the very beginning, because it's an attempt to adhere to an idea, and human beings only do things sincerely when they have no other choice, and they arrive at having no other choice when the pain and the disappointment and the misery of continuing on in the same way is simply no longer sustainable. Human beings have an enormous capacity for pain, an enormous threshold for misery. But when, for a given person, that threshold is reached and it can no longer be tolerated, it is only then that someone becomes a true candidate to walk this path. Anything short of that is one trying to live up to some notion that is good for him, and that will fail. That'll fail before you walk out the door, because it's just something like need is so deep within human beings. A person needs his spouse to love him. He needs his children to revere and respect him. He needs to be loved by his children. He needs to be told that he's doing a good job. He needs the adoration of his friends. He needs the companionship of various different people. He needs the validation of the world. The needs spread so far and so wide. They span the earth 16 times. How in the world would you begin to prescribe your way out of that? I mean, that's just, it's beyond unserious. You know, the web of need is so intricate. The complexity and the tentacles of attachment run so deep within the human being that it makes him a complete prisoner. And even as I say that, don't agree with me, because what will happen is that your mind will say, what he's saying is right. It does make me a prisoner. It makes me sad. It makes me sorrowful. It leads to disappointment and pain and anxiety and stress. So that's right. It does. And I really need to get away from this attachment. You'll fail. That isn't powerful enough. Intellectual understanding isn't powerful enough. Say a situational attempt to flee isn't powerful enough. It's only when you hit a brick wall and the realization that behind that brick wall are an endless row of brick walls, then there's a chance. So forget about the idea of trying to get away from need or to overcome and dismantle all your attachments. Forget about achieving those things. If something benefits you or doesn't benefit you, whatever chances of that there are, it will only arise by listening with a genuine ear and not listening in order to follow, because I'm not telling you to do anything, so there's nothing to follow. But understand, understand not so that you may do, but so that you may understand. How many needs does a person have? In every compartment of his life, from his professional life to his personal life, there are an endless array of needs. He needs to become a success. He needs to make more money. He needs, when he goes to the grocery store, he needs the clerk to respond kindly to him. These things are so deep, and there are so many. And don't for a second think that you're right. I should not need the clerk to be happy with me. Let's just forget about all of those things. Never believe that the opposite of what I'm saying is the truth. The opposite of what I'm saying will lead you to the same hell as what I'm saying itself. Imagine for a second, not with any attempt or hope of arriving there. Just imagine for a second that you had no need. You did not need your family to love you. You did not need your children to look up to you or respect you or listen to you. You did not need to become a success. You did not need to become validated. You did not need for your friend to return your text message or your phone call. You did not need your boss to compliment you. You did not need to look handsome or pretty. You did not need to be considered cultured or fashionable. Uh, Imagine that if you had absolutely no needs, um, where you would be, what kind of life that would be. And I must say, right from the start, that there, this world is filled with people who give reflexive responses, who do not have the bandwidth to listen to anything without letting their mouth run wild with statements like, well, if I had no need, then why would I be here if I had no need? And blah, blah, blah. You know, for those people, they need to just shut up and leave. This is not for them. This will never be for them. So don't waste my time or yours and just leave. I'm not interested in your comments. So this is for the people who who are truly interested in silently, quietly allowing these words to seep into them to see if they find a home or if there's natural aversion to them, without any response whatsoever. Any response is a false response. And the quicker the response comes, the more of a fool the person is who's responding. Uh, so imagine for a second that if a person had no need, how freely that person would move in this world. Imagine that you did not need your child to look up to you. Imagine. That is ultimate freedom. Um, Now, what would be the mistakes? What would be the holes? What would be the natural questions that arise? What would be the holes in the understanding of this? What would it mean to misunderstand? Well, what it would mean to misunderstand would be that if one viewed this as someone who was uh, completely unfeeling and did not register anything that was going on around him. And that simply wouldn't be the case. In fact, if a person has no need, then that person is available to every single person in his life. A person who has no need is not a burden. And human beings are constant burdens to each other. And the greatest burden is the weight of need. But if you know someone or knew someone or imagined that you knew someone who needed nothing from you, now that's easy to say for someone who is a stranger, but imagine if it was a family member or a friend or someone close to you who needed nothing from you, who didn't need a thank you or an apology or not even a, a, a pleasant gesture. That person would be a person that you would naturally gravitate towards. Now, you gravitating towards that person wouldn't be that person's intent. He wouldn't care less. But being free of need isn't about making others peaceful in your presence. That's just a natural side effect. Being free of need, first and foremost, is to escape the imprisonment that need produces. And don't try to escape the imprisonment, uh, because you'll fail. But it is just the ultimate utopia to live a life without need. Now, why is it, or in what way would such a thing even be possible? Well, it would become possible when someone recognizes that this world can give no one anything. This world can give someone temporary pleasures. It does have that ability. But those temporary pleasures are temporary, and therefore they need to be replenished. So this world cannot give anything to anyone of any lasting value. No human being can give anything to any other human being of any lasting value. That and it's very important that you don't listen to what I just said, because if you do, it'll be intellectual. It's you have to marry that with your own experiences, experiences of your own life that must be seen in retrospect, with objectivity and deep analysis and nuance and sensitivity. Don't ever buy or believe what I say. When someone realizes that need leads to a brick wall, it leads to attachment, and attachment leads to pain and conflict and anxiety and fear, uh, and that most importantly of all, that it simply cannot lead anywhere else but those places. You see, if there's a chance that need could lead to freedom, then it would be logical for human beings to entertain need, since there was a possibility that it could lead to freedom, even though the odds were very heavily stacked against that. But if there is zero chance that need can lead to freedom, then that might make a person consider and examine. So once again, I'm not trying to talk you into it. In fact, I'm trying to talk you out of it, if anything. I'm trying to talk you out of the idea of trying to get over need and attachment. But if you had no need in your life, you would move completely free in this world. Nothing would affect you. Everything would be greeted with a smile, and not a prescriptive smile, not a fake and false body language that is being taught to you as a reactive and defensive cosmetic attempt to pretend as if you are not being affected. But naturally, when you need nothing, you have everything. Good night. The title of this solo podcast is Competition Breeds Parity. You know, in 1954, Roger Bannister broke the 4-minute mile. And prior to that, everyone had said how that was a ridiculous thing to even try, and that the body could not hold up to run a 4-minute mile, that it was impossible. But Bannister played it out in his mind, and it's something that he devoted himself to, and he broke it. But that isn't the most instructive thing. It's that within a month and a half, John Landy broke the 4-minute mile, and then within a couple of years, 10 others broke the 4-minute mile. So what does that teach us? Well, what that teaches us is that human beings only believe something is possible when someone else has done it first. And there's an interesting corollary to Shakespeare, because Shakespeare wrote plays either based upon plays that had already been written or based upon things that had happened in history. They weren't created from scratch. Human beings have a tendency to compete. They tend to look at the things that are in play and enter into a conflict in order to achieve that thing. And when they enter that thing, they are entering that thing with the idea of what has already been done, and most often even less than that. What is the most common thing being done? And then they compete at that. So that becomes their game within the game. Their game within the game becomes to get better and to improve and to inch by the next person and to get to a point where they can call themselves good or in a particular place, a standard or a hierarchy. Never, ever, almost never do they look at something and say, uh, this is the way it's being done. This is what's already been achieved. And I wonder what the possibility of, I wonder what the outer possibility for a human really is. That is a very rare person who approaches the matter from that way. Even in professional sports, all across professional sports, there's an enormous amount of parity. Why is that? Well, when you ask any question, it depends who is posing the question and who it's being posed to. And if you pose a question to society, society will give you society's answers. And quite frankly, even those who are amongst the more successful people in society, even they will be conditioned to give you societal answers according to their own conditioning. And so the natural answers that you will receive if someone asks the question, why, well, what is it about this person that allows him to get to the top and no one else has done that? They will begin to justify the status quo. They will begin to say things that are in support of that which has already been done. So the posing of the question, what is really possible, can only be made by the person who is immune to outrage, because that kind of person will pay a price. He will get swarmed and he will be shot down by society who insists that mediocrity is the order of the day. And so if you say, well, why, for instance, why was Tiger Woods the best? Why was he so dominant? That book hasn't been written. And the reason it hasn't been written is because it probably wouldn't sell a lot of copies. People aren't interested in the truth. They're interested in sort of the salacious details about things. They're interested in hyperbole. They're interested in media. They're interested in fantasy. They're interested, in comedy. They're interested in entertainments. No one's really interested in the truth. You simply have top of the head answers about things that aren't really based upon really any evidence. So you'll hear, well, Tiger Woods was the best, and that's because he was the most talented, and that's because he had a Green Beret as a father, and that's because his mother was a Buddhist, and that's because he was physically more gifted than other golfers, and that and on and on and on. Now, the rapidity with which someone gives a response often implies or often betrays the source of that response. So when someone immediately shoots out a reflexive response, it isn't based upon anything real. It's based upon opinion and conjecture. And that opinion and conjecture is informed by media and books and the status quo and the societal opinions and the societal beliefs. So competition breeds parity. The reason that it does so is because human beings are conditioned to look at other human beings in order to discover what's possible. And so if in hockey, the average is, I don't know, let's say it's 3 goals a game, then everyone will try to no one will ask the question, how do I score 12 goals a game? That's ludicrous. And the coach who asks that question will probably get fired. In team sports, there's no freedom. You are completely beholden to a GM, and wherever there's GMs and boards and committees, you're sunk because there probably isn't a single person in that so-called team environment who is an outlier with regard to the way that he thinks, and everyone's already regressed to a conditioned mean. So you don't have a chance unless you're willing to get fired every week. That person has a chance, but then eventually he's not going to have a place to work. Um, so when in a very interesting thing happens in competitive sports. In competitive sports, players sign a contract and they don't know that they're signing it. And the contract goes like this: if I'm better than you, then I will play down to you. If you're better than me, then I will try to play up to you. And we will both meet in the middle. And make sure that neither of us runs too far away from each other. This is the way that humans subconsciously think. For that rare person who becomes dominant like a tiger, he doesn't subscribe to those contracts, sorry. And that's largely because of his training. That's largely because of the way in which he was raised. Um, Not from a parenting perspective, but from the visions that were created by him and for him. Those things are done by design. I think competition cements one as being a cog in the wheel. It ensures that one will um, only get to a certain point. It is a path to struggle, and struggle is a very romantic idea. So the whole system is rigged. Um, so if a person says, "Well, if that's what's being done, that I have to enter that foray and try to earn my keep, and therefore I will work hard and I will struggle." And if he for a moment questions, well, why do I have to struggle? There's already a prepackaged response for that, which is, well, without struggle, there is no progress. You must struggle. You must work hard. Everyone else is working hard. And so that question will be beat right out of him the very moment it's uttered. So there's already an answer for every reservation that that person may have. It's already done. There's already a brochure. There's already a sign. There's already a picket. There's already a bumper sticker. Everything's already been answered before it's even questioned. So this is why it takes a sort of a human being with a DNA which basically despises and resents the culture, because it knows that everything out of the culture's mouth is complete drivel and nonsense, and all it can do is limit him. No one, no one is going to benefit from a culture. A person can only be limited by the culture. So, in business, this happens all the time. In business, there's a competition, and usually that competition centers around price. And if you are selling shoes, and your shoes are the same types of shoes that someone else is selling, then the only choice that you have is to compete based upon price. And that, as you likely know, is a very, very rapid race to the bottom. Eventually, you will get to a point where you will be outbid and you can no longer stay in business because you must make a certain amount of profit in order to stay in business. So that's totally unsustainable. So the wise person will create something that nobody else has. Because if you create something that nobody else has, there is no fixed price for whatever your thing happens to be, because you are the only one who has it. Um, and that which the market cannot define, it cannot control. So people are too quick to jump into the ring. If you jump into the ring, you are resigning yourself to a lifelong process of struggle. If you choose not to fight, then there is a possibility for you. if you choose the path of mastering something as opposed to competing for something, then that's a fundamentally different path for a fundamentally different person. Because even if a person is sympathetic and sensitive to that idea, um, he'll be walking down a corridor of a million people his entire life. And from both sides of the corridor, he will be shouted at by people who are trying to pull him away from that towards competition, telling him how unrealistic it is, and telling him how impractical it is, and telling him, does he think that he's better than so and so? Who does he think he is? And if it really could be mastered, then people would have already mastered it. And I've gotten this question many times in the world of golf, from the PGA Tour, and talking to Golf Channel analysts and other people. And the questions are always the same. I can see them coming from a mile away, and which is that, do you know anybody who has mastered this? Do you know anybody who is, and my answer is always the same, which is, do you know anybody who has asked the questions? No one asks these types of questions. Everyone is far too busy seeking answers, and answers, sooner or later, always and forever, fail. At some point, an answer will fail. But if one learns to ask questions, then those questions create a path. Answers remove one from the path. So no, human beings are not taught this way. This is like talking, this is like as if I was speaking on Mars. It's one thing to be countercultural. It is one thing to be a contrarian, but when the ideas, and when the talk, and when the conversation approaches something that's frankly into outer space with regards to its distance from Earth, it really only resonates with a very small number of people, because most will fall off by the time that we hit Earth's atmosphere. And the reason that it is the case is because society has gone so far astray. It isn't that outer space is so far. It's that earthlings have moved so far from the truth. So naturally, there's going to be a million miles of distance. The degree to which people have gone astray is so astounding that it's natural for someone to think that how could it be that everything that I've been taught is completely wrong, and not only wrong, but criminally wrong, pathologically wrong, disastrously wrong. That's the sky is falling type of mentality. That's going to be very hard for people to accept, and that's why it's for a very small number of people. And it is actually no coincidence that the individuals who become supreme and become Miyamoto Musashis, there's only one. There's not two. So that stands perfectly to reason. So competition isn't the road to greatness. Mastery is the road to greatness. But if you walk the path of mastery, you're going to have to walk it all alone. There's no one who's going to accompany you, because no one has been taught that. No one believes that. That's not in the water. That isn't in the food and in the air. You're basically going to have to breathe a different sort of oxygen, and it's only a person with a unique form of DNA who has the lungs to breathe that sort of oxygen. Because every step of the way, you're going to have to walk blind and deaf and dumb, and talk to nobody, convince nobody, and listen to nobody. The number of people who can actually tell you the truth in this world, you can count on maybe half of one hand. The situation is that extreme. So, competing with someone is essentially a road to mediocrity. And while you may become very good at that craft, the question that you will not have asked is, I wonder how, quote, good I could have been if I didn't pursue the path of competition. So the reason that parity exists is because everyone competes. And where there is competition, there has to be parity, because everyone chooses to fight for the same prize. And it isn't even that they're going for the prize, it's that they choose to fight. The fight is the main attraction. The struggle is the main attraction. The hard work is the main attraction. The bleed and sweat and uh, uh, and give forth day and night effort. That's the main attraction. That seems to be the litmus test that everyone is taught to go by. Um, uh, so I don't buy for a second that a human being can't become anything. I don't buy that for a second. Now, I will say that a person is wise to follow his talents, and wherever his talents happen to lie, then that's naturally the wisest course of action for him. Um, but this idea that you have to compete and that you have to inch away past another. I mean, just ask Usain Bolt. Ask Usain Bolt what he does the moment that he realizes in an Olympic competition that he's about to win. He slows down. He slows down. So the question that interests Usain Bolt, for no good or bad, but the question that interests him is, can I win? Can I best the next person? And so long as you are committed to besting the next person, the moment that you best him by an inch, you'll stop. And once again, there's no right or wrong. I can only speak for myself. And what fascinates me is the outer limits of human possibility, is what is possible for a human being. And if that's the question, then Bolt wouldn't slow down. He would find out what he truly can achieve. So parity is a natural offspring of competition. And if people were truly elite, if a human being truly wants to take full advantage of the glory of his humanity, then why would he have any contemporaries? Why would he not be smitten by the idea that he could arrive at a tournament or in the world of business and never have any competition whatsoever, because he has discovered the truth about that thing, because he has devoted himself to the mastery of that thing? I don't know why a person who seeks to be a legend wouldn't do that. I can only say that the number of individuals in this world who think that way or who have such desires, I think they do exist, but I believe that they're beat out of them by this caustic and poisonous culture in society. So in the end, competition has no choice but to breed parity and mediocrity. Good night. The title of this discourse is Lunch is for Wimps. That's a quote from Gordon Gekko, who's a character from Oliver Stone's masterpiece called Wall Street. Essentially, that is symbolic for the idea of socialization and the truth that those who truly become great uh, tend to be against the grain in every way, not the least of which is isolating themselves from the traditions and the common ways of people in society. You know, this discourse really is about teaching you what to do, or just like all the other things that I write. I mean, it really isn't to tell anyone what to do, because those things generally go nowhere. The question, and it's all about questions, the question is not whether one should socialize or not socialize, or whether he should be in a group or isolate himself. There is no right or wrong. There's nothing for me to tell you or anyone else what is the right thing to do or the wrong thing to do. Rather, it's about understanding that society can only bring someone down, Now, if someone is already down, then society is not going to really harm them because the conditioning is already complete, and or that individual does not have that sort of DNA that um, that is really threatened by society. Uh, but there, amongst elite circles in business and in sports and in all domains, uh, there is obviously the traditions and the natural way of being of human beings, um, is to socialize, is to get together, is to have a cocktail party, is to have uh, group dinners, and and there's nothing wrong with that or right with that. But I think that something often goes missed, and that is that those things are seen as completely harmless and or a way to derive a sense of pleasure without producing any untoward side effects. I think that's a mistake. The recognition that socialization has a cost is a recognition that is lost on the vast majority of people, um, because it is seen truly as harmless. Whatever environment an organism exposes him or herself to, that organism has no choice whatsoever whether he or she will become conditioned by that environment. Uh, no one is powerful enough to remain immune to conditioning. That, I think, is a fundamental truth that must be realized, and it will, and the truths that I talk about uh, generally are best imbibed by those who are elite in their craft, um, because those who are already elite tend to be very sympathetic and have an open eye and an open ear for ways to become elite in all parts of their life. Their DNA is already there. So now it's just a matter of shining that light in a different direction. Those who are not elite and or who don't have any interest in being elite, um, no one starts from zero and gets to 100. It doesn't really happen. Those are nice sort of rags to riches stories, but they're not true. It they may be true from a financial standpoint that one had nothing and ended up becoming wealthy. That's fine, but that DNA was always there. They didn't start from zero. So uh, these things are not for the masses. These things are not for the people who don't have that sort of desire slash DNA slash sincerity slash seriousness. So these are for the people who already have something of a DNA, and or who have already gotten there, so to speak, in a particular domain. They had a lot to lose. The person who was elite in his domain has a lot to lose by socialization, because whatever group that he finds himself amidst, it may be that there's one person there who he can truly benefit from a conditioning perspective, but that's very unlikely. It is virtually certain that the vast majority, in most cases, all the people who he socializes with are going to bring him down in ways that he does not realize. Um, that's the danger. If someone brings you down in ways that you realize, then you can do something about it. You can counteract it. You can stop associating with that person. It becomes evident. But the danger really is in the things that are not seen. Human beings will always regress towards the mean, always, just like water that laps the edge of a rocky shore over time erodes that rocky shore. That rocky shore has no choice but to be eroded. So, you know, a lot of times there's a habit of doing things because you sort of fall into habits without knowing that you're doing them. And because everyone else is doing them too, it's never questioned. But, if you examine what you being among the elite, if you examine what you say at these parties and the things that you discuss and the jokes that you laugh at and the topics that are talked about, it's all drivel. I mean, of what meaning is it? Of what significance is it? What is it besides just passing the time? So, you know, that's those are these are very um, low level things for someone who himself isn't low level. And each time that is done, then one imbibes subconsciously things that sort of takes the edge off of his uniqueness. It sort of dulls the sharpness of his rarity. And the very recognition that that is at risk, that his uniqueness and his rarity and his originality, that those things are at risk, I think changes the game. Because then one does not view socialization as harmless. Everything in this life has a cost. Everything. From the things that are most menial to the things that are most apparently significant. Nothing is free. So the person who truly seeks the truth about these things will recognize that there is a cost to socialization as well. I'll go so far as that virtually all the friends that an elite person has are not to his benefit. They are to his detriment. They are bringing him down, whether he realizes that or not. So the person who realizes these things, if he isn't already a loner, if he isn't already a recluse, if he isn't already an isolationist, he will see the practical benefit of being so. And this is not any sort of recommendation that one should be. But it is in seeing the truth, one is able to make up his own decisions as to what will benefit him most and what will bring him harm. So overall, socialization is an incredible waste of time. If there is a very particular reason for it, one seeks to make a particular connection in their business, or one needs to meet someone that could be that he could provide value to, and the other person could as well. Those are strategic and potentially beneficial things. But in those situations, one is going in with their eyes open. They're going in with a particular focus, as opposed to going in unguarded. And going in unguarded is when the floor falls out. That's when problems usually arise. Whatever you do with open eyes, it tends to not hurt you. But the things that you are unaware of, the things that you become blindsided by, those things happen as a result of not knowing the domain in which you're walking into, where the traps lie, so to speak. So, if you watch human beings, it's said that human beings are social creatures. I'm not. I have no evidence for that. I'm not certain that that's the case. I know for a fact that human beings like to justify what they do, and they justify the status quo. And since they enjoy being social, it's very easy to say that they were meant to be social creatures. But of what benefit is this socialness that happens? Much of social media is an insult. Posting pictures of silly things, and people talking about them walking their dog today. I mean, this is valuable human time that never returns, that is being spent on frivolousness. The addiction to smartphones and internet and the proliferation of these things is an enormous cost to the quality of human life. Human beings just waste their lives across the board, whether it is the elite or whether it is the common. They all waste their lives. The question is, how much of their lives are they wasting? And it is the dramatic realization of that on a visceral level that one is indeed wasting their life, even though they may have earned billions of dollars and created great things or become a superstar. That's fine, but the fact that one is still wasting their life is a realization that when it hits home to one or maybe two people, uh, that's a game changer. That that has a fairly pronounced impact. That uh, that has the power to have them change course. And once again, it isn't my recommendation that they should change course. The my desire to change someone is practically non-existent. It you know, um, I find that these things are of value to speak about, largely for myself. I enjoy speaking about things that are deep and are not seen in society. Um, and this is very much one of them. Socialization is a largely a complete waste of time. It is the filling of empty space, and frankly, so is the idea of productivity. Productivity is busy work. I mean, that's a podcast for another day, but productivity is busy work. I mean, so what that you got 20 things done today? Um, they're not, most of those things are not significant anyways. So the quality of life is really a matter of engagement, how lost and how engaged something is in the creation of something. Not that the creation of it, to be honest, actually matters, but the quality of the life is at its peak when someone is fully engaged in something, as opposed to doing things for an ulterior motive, or as opposed to doing things because it's, quote, good for them, or because it's, quote, healthy. Um, so this is a view on socialization that society does not offer up. In fact, it's the opposite. Society creates groups and institutions and conferences and meetings and social events and cocktail parties and get-togethers and cookouts and all of these things in order to bring people together to talk about drivel. Uh, Take this for what you will. I have no recommendations, but Deco's right. Uh, Lunch is for wimps. Good night.